What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about iOS and really where it's been going and what's been going on with iOS. I want to say this: was an iPhone/iPad teacher for a number of years, and I've had a lot of experiences with using iOS. The minute it was launched on Verizon with the iPhone 4, I jumped on board, and I was really excited to have my iPhone. The deal is that it was released, the original iPhone, released on June 29, 2007. It was pretty limited. It had a phone, an iPod, and a web browser. And that was it. It pretty much didn't do too much more than that. And it was great. It worked very well. In fact, Android was released shortly after, or alongside with it. I have to double check on that, but I believe it was after. And had more features. But the iPhone was simple. It was easy to use, and it was smooth, unlike Android. So, it was really, really good. And the problems were it was too simple. It had no copy and paste commands, no wallpaper, no external apps, which at the time Android was providing. So, they got better, and time moved on, and things got better. There was wallpapers, there was copy and paste commands, there were settings, there was apps that you could, oh man, the apps galore. And obviously it's still that way today. iOS 6 was released and it was still fantastic. You had less lag, there was a lot more they dealt with better response times. You even had Siri at the time, and it worked decently. And then they decided to release iOS 7. So, let's take a look at iOS 7. So, this is iOS 7. Oops, this is what the UI looks like, essentially. You have a lot more of a flatter interface compared to the iOS 6. And if we take a look even further at the comparison, this is the iOS 6 versus iOS 7. They got rid of skeuomorphism. In other words, your camera looks less like a camera on the right-hand side. It looks like a cartoon, and it's more flat. It's a more minimalist design. However, the minimalist design came with a bunch of bugs, and in my opinion, threw it off. You also had notifications change. They changed a lot of things on iOS 7. In fact, it was the most redesign of an operating system Apple has ever done. Android started to get way better and started to offer more options, and they did so many redesigns and so many changes with Android. Eventually, Android got really popular at the time, and even now, obviously, it's very popular. But the iPhone then decided to make larger iPhone. Apple decided to make larger iPhones, so you had a larger size. And there's a thing that I made that says performance matters. The problem is with iOS 7, it got laggy. It got really laggy. Things didn't work as well on it. We've had larger sizes now we have to deal with, and with the introduction of the iPhone 5S in this case, it actually it kind of slowed down. So you have a higher resolution than the iPhone 4 now. You have the iPhone 5 and it slowed things down, but not on top of that. The iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus come out because, quite frankly, Android devices were getting bigger and more people were going with Android. This was in 2014, mind you, not that long ago, where we had smaller iPhones, and now we are stuck with the larger iPhones. So that is the case here, but the problem is that these larger iPhones have a larger resolution. And iOS 7 didn't take too kindly to resolution changes. For example, remember this? Maybe you don't, because it was one of those weird releases Apple did. They called it the new iPad. It was really, they rephrased it and called it the new iPad with Retina display. And it was a higher resolution iPad, and quite frankly worked really, really well with iOS 6. However, with iOS 7 and onwards, as you increased, the performance really started to take a hit, and it started to take a dive. So the performance went down, and it got up to a point where it just wasn't as fast. It wasn't as smooth. Android was starting to actually start to catch up. And you had a higher resolution iPad, but yet your older iPads were running better. They just were. There was less lag, there was less latency, and over time, people really got used to this. They got used to the lag. They got used to the user interface not being as perfect. And then, on top of everything else, the iPad comes along, new devices come along, iPhones, and your old devices start really running slower. You are pretty much subjected to kind of throwing them out. I have a Nexus from 2013. I still use the thing. And guess what? It still runs pretty well, and it runs Android. They didn't slow it down due to updates. Apple claims that they're not slowing it down. Well, does that mean that the adaptiveness of iOS is actually just worse and worse for older devices? It doesn't make me really want to stick with them as much. And then they decided, okay, well, it kind of is lagging, but let's go ahead and see what happens when it does lag. We're going to put a hardware fix on it. We're going to release the iPad Pro, and the iPad Pro gets released, obviously years later. It has 120 hertz. People on YouTube, people on reviews are being like, wow, this is the fastest iPad I've ever played with, I've ever tried, and everything like that. Let me tell you something. The original iPad actually worked pretty well. And what they're doing here is they're doubling the frame rate of iOS, which is supposedly at 60 frames per second, and which it really isn't. And they're doubling it. And it basically sort of makes it seem faster and smoother, except you still have the lag, you still have the glitches a little bit. It's just not as bad, it's not as noticeable. But to me, that analogy is like putting lipstick on a pig, which, oddly enough, is something they've been doing lately to try to cover up a lot of their problems. For example, they decide with the iPhone X to basically create the iPhone X with a notch. And as you can see to the right-hand side, that's a notch. It has a higher resolution, and we know how that works out. And they got rid of the home button. They got rid of a lot of features, which, again, it's not necessarily bad, but they have a notch. That impacts software. That impacts what we see. However, it can be fixed with software. As you can see to the left, the actual thing itself can be fixed, so that way it works and it's a full-size glass. So yeah, that's where they've come. They've really, they just don't seem to be what they started out with. What they started out with was really simple, but they provided the consumer a really good experience, a really good top-notch experience with, no pun intended, notch, but with little to no lag. And yeah, occasionally a program would quit or something would not work. That's a computer for you. But yeah, it's just it's kind of, to me, it's really sad. Apple has lost me. I used to teach iPad classes. I used to teach a lot of things. And it just doesn't seem to be the same that it originally started out. It just doesn't. There's a lot more lag. There's a lot more things that just don't work out as well. And I hate to say it, but the competition has caught up. Android is actually a very, very good operating system at this point, and there's premium options available, and it doesn't lag. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't cripple devices, in my opinion, over time. I really want Apple to succeed. But the problem is the users don't really even realize, not all of them, that their experience has been downgraded. Everybody's so hooked on, it's an Apple product. But Apple used to actually be really good. Apple used to have a decent way of going about things. Like the iPhone, the original iPhone was fantastic. Maybe it was just the death of Steve Jobs that helped get this, unfortunately, to go to the point that it did. But they could still innovate. They could still do things to turn things around. They give you more hardware specs and everything, but that doesn't matter. Hardware does not matter. My iPad is faster than an iPhone 7 running iOS 11 versus iOS 6. How sad is that? It's about software optimization. Android is way the hell better at this. And unfortunately, iOS used to be okay at it. It wasn't great, but it was okay. So now we're really stuck here. I have decided to make the move to Android, obviously, a while ago. But I want to see Apple do decent. I want to see better competition. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Put a comment below. I know I've been critical about Apple, but the criticism comes from a little bit of concern, and I actually really do want them to succeed. I just wish that their products were not, their software on their products were just much better. I don't know where to go with them. So thank you guys for watching this video. It's a little bit of a different type of video, but I wanted to kind of let you know my feelings on iOS. And I just wish that they could start getting the idea of, we do care about this. At least I do. Maybe not everybody, and that's part of the issue. But if I made a product that I would want to show off, you know, internally, I'd want it to be good, despite somebody else not noticing something. It's like when somebody eats a really good piece of meat. You know, you might actually really like the piece of meat, and everybody likes it, but the chef is not too pleased with it because he couldn't add those extra spices that he wanted, and he noticed it. And the top chefs around the world actually tasted it and noticed it as well, but the average person didn't notice the difference. But in terms of making quality, I think Apple is downgraded. I see better use of Android in terms of quality over time. Alright guys, thank you guys for watching this video. I will be doing an unboxing of the OnePlus 5T tomorrow, and I'll be doing a YouTube video, obviously, review on it very soon. And I hope you appreciate this video. It was rather of a long one, but I think it needed to be discussed in terms of what I think about iOS and what has happened. So thank you guys for watching this. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. At least you watched it. And anyways, stay tuned for more videos.